being recorded. And we'll do our best to speak towards the microphone for you. In attendance is myself, Joe Roach, and then we'll go around the room, starting with Laura.
Laura Reynolds, Linda Jones,
Kate Williamson.
Elizabeth Sweeney.
Welcome, good to see you. So everybody's got the agenda. There's really only one item on here. We've called it to order. It's 2:09 right now. And everybody is accounted for. Adjustments to the agenda. I know of none. Does anybody have any requests for adjustment to the agenda?
I don't have the agenda.
There should be a copy on the table right there.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up today's release that I forwarded via email from Connect Maine.
Okay.
They're looking for information, feedback on, it should be in your inbox.
I saw it earlier. I haven't read it, but I did see it.
So they're just looking for information, and the first deadline is June 25th. And it's on public-private partnerships and federal funding. So they're going to do some more work on it, and there are a succession of dates. They want RFI responses due by July 5th. They're going to review them in the middle of July. So this kind of looks similar to what had been previously mentioned in their presentation to us. And I think it would be worthwhile, but it would require CCI input if we submitted something, anything. It doesn't commit us to anything. We're not applying for anything. And even if we don't go for any funding, we still can speak up.
Right.
Bit of a push, but it's not labor intensive.
What's your pleasure? Would you like to spend some time on this between now and the next meeting and go forward with it?
It's something that you think you could spearhead, Linda, and
Sure.
coordinate with CCI as to what we need to.
Oh, yeah,
pretty
it never
experience.
hurts, it never hurts to ask, and it's just, they're looking for input
Right.
initially. And to meet the June 25th deadline, which I think is next Friday,
Right.
just have to ask, just get it out there. And perhaps if I could have the email address of the two folks that attended our meeting last time from CCI, that, I think that would be
Yeah,
helpful.
I think, especially, and I can't recall her name, but she was part of the working with the
With
state and Connect Maine and all of that, so.
Yeah.
Sarah. or something, Sarah.
Sarah Davis, I think.
Yeah,
That would be awesome, I'll take that up.
and feel free to call any of us if you need input.
I'll send a review.
Okay.
Yeah. It's fine.
All right.
It's a group thing.
Okay, any other adjustments? Hearing none, any old business? Hearing none, we're new business, so we're gonna work today on preparing a presentation for the quarterly meeting. Point of information, I did send out an email, Linda did respond, that Dallas can do it on June 30. I just picked a date that I thought would work on our end. There's obviously still some flexibility there. If that doesn't work, we can still work it out. And my plan is to bring that to the Rangeley board on Monday. So, we'll all have to give notice, as you know, and it's a public meeting and so forth.
So next Wednesday night
Mhm.
is what you're looking at.
That's 6.
A week from
Wednesday, 2 weeks from
2 weeks
today.
from today.
Oh, 2 weeks.
The 30th,
Yeah.
yeah, that would work, I think, for Rangeley Plantation, we would have an assessors meeting, I can
Right.
tell whoever. Hopefully just-
The only question I had, I believe Rangeley would be happy to host the group in this room, or maybe the school. I've never been to a quarterly meeting, so I don't know where you've held them in the past.
They rotate. They usually, but that in those situations, they usually only have like 1 or 2 representation from Rangeley maybe. So I would expect you'd need a bigger room because we're asking for everybody to attend.
Yeah,
We've
at least 20.
attended here before in this particular room, and the whole board of Rangeley assessors, selectmen have attended for the past.
So we can set tables up with kind of like a horseshoe, and then the benefit of here is we can still have this.
Yeah, it's really whoever.
You only have
wants.
9 additional people to your select board, right? You have 3 assessors.
There are 3 assessors in
You
town
have
clerk who
4.
all responded, they are available and looking forward to it.
Okay, so 4, 8, maybe an additional 11 people. Seems like that could fit in here.
No, an additional 12 people.
Well,
We can make it work, we can put tables there. Make it work.
Or even just chairs, I mean.
Yeah.
What we've done in the past, I think.
Let's just, that sounds.
Let's shoot for that, and if that changes, we'll.
Let's see what the response is, and we'll get a better number, and if we need a bigger location, we can look to the school, or our room is a little bit bigger, but not by much, but
Okay. So that was the only note I had. Kate has prepared some information. I printed that off, and if Kate wants to.
Yeah, I
take it from
can,
here.
so, well, thinking about how we would present, I just want, the purpose and the goal of this, right, is to get everybody, you know, now, the delegates have a fair idea what's going on, but just to get everybody on the same page about where we are in the process, what decisions still need to be made, and that they have to be made pretty succinctly and move forward to get this done in a timely fashion. Give them an understanding of the pros and cons. I know we've gone back and forth. I mean, I have personally in my head about 120 times about the interlocal versus independent and, you know, those types of things. So I thought that if we started off with just an intro, just getting everybody up to speed of what we've been doing, and then go over the solution as it, you know, as it's been presented to us by Consolidated. Go over the 2 funding options that we're considering now, which is the bond option or a bank option. And then how organizationally we're going to go ahead and get that money. Are we gonna go for it from an interlocal agreement point of view, where we sign an agreement and what that entails and what the pros and cons of that are? Or are we gonna go from it individually, but we're still gonna be contracting, you know, the contract is basically gonna be the same, just the dollar amounts per individual municipality would be different. And then next steps, so they know where we're at, because timing wise, if we're June 30th, we were looking at a second week of July type presentation timeframe for the public. So that the public would know what this option is, what this solution is gonna look like.
Did you say July 1?
Well, June 30th is hopefully gonna be the meeting, and I was thinking around the 15th of July. Because we would be having to go for a special town meeting if we chose to go with the bond. By the end of July. Because August 2nd is the bond.
have we determined whether or not the town of Rangeley can have an in-person vote?
We have not. That's not.
But that will be presented at your next meeting, which will happen before this, right? And your next,
Monday.
so you'll know.
So you're gonna plan on asking that at Monday's meeting?
Is that what you
It's
recommend?
a hypothetical question at that point, so I know I can see where your brain is going, Joe, where you're going, well, we haven't decided if we're gonna go interlocal or not, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter, because special town meeting would require the same 30-day notification. You know, so.
Not for a vote.
Not for a vote.
Not for an open town meeting.
No, that's what I'm saying, if they said no,
Well,
that they
that
wouldn't go to a
changes
town, if they said no, we have to go to a ballot, stay with the ballot, then we need 30 days advance.
At least.
At least.
Right.
if we were absentee.
So that means you need to have done it by July 1st.
Yes,
Or in August.
we said June 26th was gonna be Sandy River Plantation's final nod on whether they can go into, talk about interlocal agreements. On the 28th would be when we would have to put, Rangeley, we would have to put the ballot together if it was gonna be and we would have to know what's on that ballot, right?
Isn't that pretty unrealistic?
Yes.
Does anyone know if you're required to go to referendum for a bond issue? I remember hearing question for MMA. Cause I don't think you can get a bond without a referendum, I don't think it can be open county. So,
Good question.
yeah.
Well, we can look into that pretty
But that-
exactly, but you can still do it by in person, by ballot, like,
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
I'm sure you have in your warrant, we have like 3 required articles.
So that's a
Where they have to come
secret
up-
ballot and not a
secret.
referendum, that's different.
Yeah, so it might be possible that way.
I can't speak, I
Well, we can
can't,
find
I
out.
can't answer that question, but I have been at the meeting that was for the town park, where we voted on that. And I have been to the school board meetings where we talked about the school board doing the school.
Yeah,
And both of those were secret ballot.
were they secret or was it referendum? Because referendums where you have a ballot that's prepared 30 days in advance, 4 absentee ballots.
That's what we have to find out.
Yeah, so that's what, yeah, that would be a question to answer. Because if you plan on like an open.
Do you wanna look into that list?
I absolutely will, yeah, I'll follow that.
Because then that would definitely mean the 28th of June would have to be, the ballots would have to be done.
Right.
Yeah, well, it means that, but it also would mean that June 21, which is
That we'd
Monday.
have to have an interlocal agreement or not, and we'd have to have a definitive dollar figure. What else are we voting on? That's it.
Which kind of, we, it's fine, right, they told us it wasn't gonna change, this time.
And we still have to go to for the bond, you'd put in the fees and all that stuff
Yeah.
too.
And we probably need a contract from CCI
Are we gonna-
specific to Rangeley with the agreement that they're gonna pay the origination fees as well as the incorporation fees of the interlocal corporation, if that's formed. We can't really vote on anything that we don't have in writing. It's not a hypothetical.
Yeah, if, to your point, Kate, if we were going to use the 28th to have ballots available, which would be the absolute latest, we'd have to have a warrant ready for Monday. We'd have to have a warrant prepared, you know, what's gonna be on the ballot.
Which is impossible. Right, if we're gonna do an interlocal agreement, that's impossible.
I
because
think
we
it's-
don't even have a
Right.
draft.
I mean, we still haven't got, if the lawyer said, if the lawyer made this interlocal agreement so easy, I mean, still the interlocal agreement would be going for the bond, not the towns, right? So
Right.
then
That would be a different ballgame.
that would be a no-go, because unless you could, the only question I have is, could you answer both questions and at the same time, have them vote for both things at the same time still? But I don't see how that's possible.
I believe you can.
Vote for both, what vote?
Yes, on interlocal agreement and yes, on the bond at the same day.
Well,
We
if
form an interlocal corporation to enter into a contract with Consolidated Communications to upgrade and expand high-speed internet service to all residences within the 4 municipalities at a cost of X dollars to be funded by bond. It's gotta be all inclusive.
But what happens if that article fails and the bond passes?
Well, you'd have to do
If yes.
a
to-
contiguous
Okay,
article,
okay, yeah. I
kind of an
remember
all or
that.
nothing.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you're voting it up or down, it's in or out.
So now are you saying we could do it by that timeframe?
Nope, depends on Rangeley and their time requirements,
Forget.
because that's still gonna come into play.
Well, and then it also now depends on this bond question that you just brought up. Which,
Right.
because if it is referendum, then all of you have the 30-day requirement.
Right,
every
but
municipal-
we're talking about all of us including that in our thing. Right, all of us posting that warrant in
Same warrant.
June 28th.
Yeah,
And we still have to get through the quarterly meeting and talk about negotiations.
Well, I mean, step one,
Stand together on one bond application. And we agree on the allocations, or if somebody wants to break and do their own financing. Right?
right. What I think, I wish we could do it earlier than the 30th, too bad, but is that we don't leave the meeting on the 30th without all the answers that we need to go forward, right? Or we'll never be able to make it
I think
on any option right now, right? So we have to do that, and we should agree in our group at least, that the approach is the right way. I'm sure there'll be questions, and there might be then some more specific questions that one organization might have than another, and they might choose to do something different. So.
But it
and
sounds
the
like
it's not ultimately up to the delegates either.
right,
It's up to. the
No, but we're
residents.
presenting,
Right,
it's not one person in this group presenting to the
Right.
selectmen, it's the delegate group is presenting to, for this
Everyone
quarterly
else.
meeting. So we should be as, informed and on the same page as we all can be. Is that,
but it sounds like we're all in agreement that there's no way we're, with the interlocal agreement, we're gonna make August 2nd bond deadline.
I don't believe we are.
Because assuming that we can't just do an in-person vote.
Honestly, I'm not sure everyone on our board or in our town is in favor of an interlocal, just kind of throwing that out there. I've heard a lot of opposition.
okay.
So not saying that on
Yeah.
election day, again, like Linda said, you never know what's gonna happen.
We started
Everybody
trying to
might-
ask a few more questions. We had an interesting meeting where we, of course, what we need is the legal department to say yes or no, but we have agreements between the towns now. Some are really formal and some are services, correct? And then,
We have contracts, they're not agreements.
Correct.
It's a
Yes.
contract.
right, which is what this is too, right? It's gonna be a contract, but it's not exactly the same.
It depends how the legal entity is set up.
We're not bonded by anything from year to year. We can either enter into a contract every year for fire protection.
I get
Or we
you. Yeah,
can
I see what you're saying. Yeah, this would be a 20-year
Yeah,
commitment.
and to get out of it might be a little bit trickier. And again, you're sharing personnel and costs of whatever organization like you guys were talking
Yeah.
about. And different, I'm sure there's gonna be insurances for this corporation as far as liability lawsuits and different things like that.
There shouldn't be.
No?
No, because the Maine State Legislature now allows broadband to be organized as a public utility,
Oh,
even though it isn't, and that was just passed in December. It's really new, and that's why some of the attorneys are having difficulty finding similar agreements within the Secretary of State's office. They have broadband agreements, but this is where municipalities own and operate their systems. We're not looking to do that. We have an offer on the table to upgrade the services. We will own the infrastructure at the end of 20 years, but CCI
Yeah.
manages it, maintains it, services it.
I was just talking
For
about
its
like the
entirety.
utilities, not the utilities, the interlocal agreement, like someone was saying, we'd have to have staff and.
Yeah,
I think that was an overstatement.
I think so too,
Really?
now that I was the one who overstated
Okay,
it, so. I was like,
So how does it run and how does it, I mean, we don't know until we get.
That's the question, like if it's,
Yeah.
you can make it more robust, like a real utility district, which we're not asking to be, we're really just trying to find a funding mechanism for the, to do this.
Okay.
But there will be responsibilities and somebody will have to do them, and whether that's somebody who's a delegate from, the board chooses Liz this year and then it switches to somebody else the next year, I mean.
Each municipality would have representation, and we talked about having equal representation, and then having because there's 4 municipalities, having that extra person, so you have an odd number.
I agree.
And you would have to have someone who would receive the communications for project management and then financial management. So say Rangeley Plantation wanted to do their own financing and CCI agreed to it. Okay, you yourself would have to figure out how that would be done. If it came into a central entity, say it came into, the treasurer's office of Dallas Plantation, and they just ensured that this was being paid and disseminated that information by email, and then the board met quarterly. It could be something as simple as that.
To be honest, the simpler the better, right, but as long as it's legal and.
Exactly,
binding.
well, no, it has to be, we can't do it otherwise.
Is there any way a lawyer can be at the quarterly meeting?
I made that note a little while ago, I'll invite her.
Okay.
I think what we should do is have a list of questions.
This is kind of the key, it's really, I'm not a municipal person, I have no idea what you guys are talking about on some of these things about what these, but
Different.
but in that piece, when we get to that piece, there are breakdowns of pros and cons, and that's where we're gonna be representing those. And then if we could have a lawyer help us identify, like if something on here, that's the purpose of today is inaccurate, we don't have it, on our.
Do we know when we're getting that interlocal agreement? It was supposed to be like around this time period,
So
wasn't
it's
it?
a very good question. There is not one. I called Kristen at the end of the day yesterday, and she was waiting for my response from, regarding which one we prefer. I didn't know. I picked out the one from Katahdin. I think that's the one that I think looks good. I wasn't trying to represent all of you in that. I just said, this is something that I like. And I did share with her your conversation with the last meeting and the conversation I've had with a couple of you individually since then. She said she understands the request for simplicity, but we want to make sure that the things that can't be simplistic, are in there. She said it should be a binding agreement that, obviously spells out all the things you're talking about now. So that is the update I have from her on that.
So now she has that information and is gonna put it together.
But she understands that Katahdin is different, and then they own an operation.
She does know that. I
Yeah.
explained that. Yeah.
Now, I wonder about the insurance thing, are the municipalities, I hate to beat the dead horse, I'm sorry, but are the municipalities is there an umbrella policy over this board? Because boards can be sued for whatever decisions they make or, don't make. So I guess,
That's a great question.
is,
When you call MMA, it's probably a different department, but they can probably shift you over there and answer that question.
maybe I could just ask that question while we're asking another question.
I think it's worth asking.
And I'm pretty sure in the plain copy of the service agreement, they do talk about liabilities for the broadband, for its installation, the workers, and spell that out.
CCIs, contract you're
Yes,
talking about?
but more specifically to Liz's point, that would be a good municipal question. Yeah.
There will definitely be some costs, associated, it just might not be as dramatic
Salaries
as I
and-
thought, yeah.
That's, yeah, just good to let people know. So if we tell people, we know we need to have insurance,
Is that what you're getting the pushback or negative feelings towards it?
Oh, no, not
Not
just that, I'm just
specifically
trying to
that.
think, not that particular issue, but I was just thinking, just in not throwing the range under us, not doing that, but I remember, with M&H's issue, I know there was a lot of lawsuits there, and, sometimes, boards I know can come under fire too. So
Yeah, I
just-
think it's a little bit different for municipalities, but it's absolutely a question we should be able to put forward and get a quick answer
Mhm.
on.
I can try to reach out to somebody tomorrow. I'll share with somebody.
Excellent. I think following all this along and taking some notes, and I think it would be really helpful if everyone was provided the same packet of materials for
That's a really
reference,
good idea.
printed and in advance of the meeting.
What would those be? The CCI contract, the generic one, right?
Yep, the service contract, the proposal, anything that we have in writing that's definitive. I would like to see, like, you went over a lot of the basics on this broadband overview. I think from the feedback that I'm getting, what I'm hearing from Liz and the other plantations, we need to make certain that we understand that this is reliable, affordable, and accessible to everyone.
Right.
And just really hone in on those points. Because we know there's broadband available, but this stands heads above the rest in all those categories.
Yes, so,
So at some point, CCI had given us their new plan program, and I think the basic plan that they offered, which was like, what, 50 over something, was
Right.
$35 a month. It was essentially what I'm paying for my DSL. I'm trying to retrieve that document, and I can't quite come up with it, because their original proposal had higher plan rates.
I never got the new one, so. I
And
saw
he
it.
mentioned it in his.
Yeah, that he
Well,
would
they
send
never
out.
sent
It
the new
was, it was lower.
They never sent that change.
Wait, what, we need to follow up on that,
Right.
because that would be a good basis of comparison if we could do Hughes and Verizon and Starlink. Because if you look at them side by side, it's not comparable.
Right. Does, who was it that just said they were gonna be calling CCI? So can you,
What am I calling?
You're calling about the RFI.
Oh, the RFI.
Yeah, so if you
Yeah.
can get the,
My head's already moved on.
I know, that's what I
Thank you.
so when you call them about that, can you ask them for the revised page? It's basically just that
Absolutely.
one page.
Yeah. And I'll try to put together a matrix.
We be comparing.
Yeah,
that would be great.
it's nice.
Do you
It's
have
nice to
all that,
compare
do you have the Starlink information?
I have a Starlink because we were gonna do it, and I will reconfirm that. Hughes,
And then
I'll
David
ask
Burgess,
someone,
Rangeley Internet. too.
yeah,
The more information, the better.
Yeah.
Because what you'll hear is, well, they didn't include this, why didn't they think about that? Yeah.
I'm happy to work at pulling together all that information and getting, I'll
Cool.
get one copy and then have someone, maybe arrange the office to print out a bunch for everyone.
Absolutely.
Or
You could email it, I mean, we could print off ours, I mean, it would be what?
it would be
3
good if
copies?
it came from one source and everybody had
Oh,
the same.
true, yeah, that's perfect, yeah, absolutely.
know?
Well, okay, so this isn't obviously a presentation, this is just my notes, right? So.
Yeah, no, we gotta start somewhere.
So you wanna do we wanna put together a PowerPoint presentation, or are we hitting a package and having a conversation? What would you prefer?
Conversation.
Conversation, okay,
Yeah. I have reached out to both local banks. And they have gotten back to me. And given me some basic information. Would we want a bank rep at the meeting? Bank reps?
Sure.
Is that a problem?
well, what we will have to, the thing about I would say no, maybe, no.
Do you want a written sheet? Like I just asked Scott Egan for a quick.
The reason why I'm saying no is if we decide in this meeting, we're gonna be sitting there debating whether we wanna go bond or bank, right? And if the answer is bank, then we're going to have to put an RFI out. I mean, an RFP out to the banks.
to
If you do all, and then we're gonna need to give them specific numbers, I mean, it's just like the bond, when we go for the bond, there's gonna be specific numbers, so. We won't have any of that information by the 30th.
So they might be able to answer
And they don't
questions.
expect it. Like, they have the overall cost, they understand that there may or may not be an interlocal corporation, that there may be individual municipal application for funding. It's more, yes, we are interested, this is what we would require, and what type of program. I mean, I can do it in paper form, or I'm asking, would you prefer to have a representative?
You already have
Actually,
the
then I-
answers in paper form? You already have the answer in paper form from both of them?
I have an expression of interest and what they would need to enter into a more serious discussion. Neither of them can offer rates or anything like that at this point. And they are speaking to bond counsel to understand the legitimacy of an interlocal corporation that covers broadband.
It might be nice to have a rep, because if
Yeah,
people
then I-
come up with
I-
questions that, we can't answer, it'd be nice to get those
Because
answers.
if I have questions and they
Yeah.
just sit there,
Yeah, I mean, we can even.
I mean,
post
you
it
know,
to the
audited
document,
financials, current debt schedule, copy of interlocal agreement between the various municipalities, copy of the draft agreement between CCI and the group, financials from CCI. I mean, those are the basics to start looking into financing. And there are a couple of different vehicles that they have that are potentials for us.
This may be a question that can't be answered, but do we know if the debt schedule for the plantations versus Rangeley are all similar, or would we be worse off going separate or better off going separate?
Well, I think that still would have to be negotiated with CCI. I think they said they would do it, but we don't know.
No, I mean, no, I don't know what the
No.
bank looking at taking out, Dallas Plantation taking out a loan and Rangeley Plantation, do you look exactly the same to them, or does Rangeley look
Oh, it's
different?
all based on how much debt we have, and I can show you that the plantations are in much better shape than the town of Rangeley.
Okay, that wasn't my
But
question.
they have a much higher tax base,
Right.
so they will wait out. That's not,
We've gotten tax anticipation notes, short term before, like a couple $100,000. I don't know, it'd be interesting
long
to see what
term
they
is
say.
different, and you really want to look at CCI's contract.
Yeah.
They will.
And where there's not much to repossess, that might be another question, I'm sure they have to look at the potential of default.
There actually is a lot to
Well,
repossess.
Where they get stored. I'm just kidding.
Well, they
Joe,
ultimately
go
may
ahead.
offer
So-
revenue.
First of all, I want to welcome Steve to the meeting. Steve, can you hear us okay?
I'm here.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. We're in the middle of talking about the agenda for the proposal or the presentation to the quarterly meeting. So the board or the delegates at the last meeting or workshop last week decided that they would offer a presentation to all of the elected folks. So our board here in Rangeley and then the 3 other communities. We have tentatively picked the date of June 30th in the evening. That's tentative at this point. And right now, we're talking about the agenda. The agenda really is intended to bring all of the elected leadership up to speed and talk about what steps we want to take next. So I think, can we start back with the intro? Is everybody okay with that? We'll talk about the agenda as Katie's presented it. So there'll be an introduction, an overview of how we got to where we're at. And then the solution overview, which is the benefits and risks of the CCI proposal, correct?
Mhm.
Kate, you want to talk about the rest of it? Pick it up from there.
You want me to go into detail on the solution overview or no?
Just a general overview of the rest of the agenda. Let's
Okay.
make sure it matches what we want to present.
So then go over the funding overview, which is the bond versus the bank option. Organizational considerations, which would be interlocal agreement versus individual communities going for the financing and contracts, and the pros and cons of each of those options. And then next steps in timing and where we get things done. So I did put a little sheet together about the broadband solution overview. Linda just was talking about that in this package, we would give a whole detailed package with all the same information prior to the meeting. That would include the presentation that CCI had given us, also their general service agreement that they had also mailed out, and some other materials that we might want to have in that package so that people can review it prior to us presenting. So for the broadband solution overview, we would hit the highlights of the proposal, go through what it means, what it entails, the timeframes, the cost, ownership, just, you know, I put down about 10 bullet points of things that I remembered right off the bat, and then benefits and risks, so that everybody would know what the benefits and risks are. And then I had a risk of not doing anything or not moving forward in a timely manner as part of that. So we'd start with why we're doing this, you know, for the public and what our intent is, do the solution overview, which is, I can go into more detail. We do need to see if any of this is, I need to add stuff or delete things or, you know.
Yeah, can we go through each one, and then while we're thinking about that, can we assign a spokesperson to present? Is this a good time to do that, you think? Put a person's name next to that, so we'll know who's responsible for what?
So the broadband solution overview, can you hear Carrie and Steve? Did you get this?
Say again, Kate?
I said, can you hear me?
I'm having a very difficult time and I'm afraid it's my connection, not you all.
I was gonna say, I can move that closer to you if that's helpful.
I don't know. Carrie?
To get up close to the mic, we wouldn't hear all that echo. The echo is terrible.
I'm actually kind of closer to the mic than others.
Can I just
so-
put it right in front of you?
Yeah.
I mean, I can-
Does that make it worse or better?
That's beautiful.
Okay. All right, there we go.
We should just move the microphone.
So the broadband solution overview, talk about how it's a high-speed fiber broadband to everyone within all the plantations in Rangeley. You know, I would probably highlight that it's to the, you know, the overview that it's to existing customers. There would be no additional charges. There would be some charges if there was no ability to have, there was no telephone connections, right? Or electric.
Not just to existing customers.
That's, so I worded that wrong, but yeah,
We'll work on it.
yes, okay. It's a 12 to 24 month implementation period where we would start seeing people up and running most likely within the 12-month period. It's a 20-year contract to implement the whole process. CCI would service it, market it, and upgrade the network throughout the term of that contract. They would be solely responsible for all of that. They would add a $10 monthly end user fee to anybody who chose to pick CCI as a solution who lived in those 4 communities. And that would be in addition to the standard contract. So we would then, we just talked about presenting a sheet of information as to what those numbers are. And I'm gonna say a number off the top of my head. It might be not exactly right, but it's pretty close. I think he mentioned somewhere 50 over 50 service is about $40 from CCI. So that means if somebody in our community signed up, we would be paying $50. They are standardizing those numbers based on the northeastern region. So it is not their standard pricing where they could price more for rural areas than other areas. We'd be getting a standardized price based on a high utilization marketplace.
May I make a comment
Yep.
on this bullet? You can repeat what I said.
Yep.
so they can hear me. think we need a bullet that there is no minimum number of subscribers.
That's.
Yes, so I did have, they will not exceed $10 per month, so that number would never be higher than the $10 per month added on. There is no, if CCI, what Laura just asked is add a button that says, a bullet that says, if CCI gets 1 user or 1,000 users, it will not change that $10 amount. They won't go up. It will never go up. That $10 extra fee will be renegotiated every 3 to 4 years.
2 years. That's in
Is that what he
contract.
said?
Yeah, they
2 years.
anticipate in 4 years that it'll be eliminated.
Okay. So just Linda just clarified it's in their contract to be renegotiated every 2 years. And they did feel that within 4 years, that $10 fee could be eliminated. It would, if anything, the more users they have means it would go down. This is a joint financial obligation between the municipalities and CCI. And the total amount that they're requesting is $3,702,725. That is making the assumption that all 4 municipalities agree to go in. If one municipality or 2 choose not to participate, the actual number would go down, but the percentage that each municipality that wanted to go in had to be bond for would go up, if that makes sense. Okay. CCI will pay monthly all municipalities' financial obligations of principal, interest, and legal fees. And they mentioned in our presentation the other day that they would do a percentage over as a contingency. And he mentioned 5 to 10% in our presentation.
Is that gonna be part of the,
Yeah.
and we'll have had that negotiated by the time we go to town meeting?
No, by the time we go to town meeting, and yeah, we will have to have it pretty close. We have to start negotiating.
Okay.
Yep, I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, could you have Liz repeat it or somebody repeat it? I could not hear a word she said.
I was just talking about, I was just asking if that understanding between the consolidated paying for the fees and everything, if that was gonna be in the contract, and Kate said that it would be.
Okay,
And
thank
the
you.
contract would be available before the town meeting for people to vote on it. or whatever.
Thank you.
Well, people wouldn't vote on the contract necessarily, but sorry. Muddy the waters there.
Right, there's a lot of next steps because the contract negotiation piece is, would be where information we're gonna need to come out of our quarterly meeting with, we need to start negotiating and get things in writing. They will guarantee the payment of these operating costs through the term of the contract. That was also something they brought up. They will word it as they're gonna guarantee the operating payment, not that they're going to guarantee the bond. So just to be clear. CCI had recommended a breakdown of municipal ownership based on the square miles installation. Now that's my assumption, that was based on square miles.
5 miles.
Yeah, okay. And when they did that, they broke it down by percentage. So I included that in this, that would be broken down in this presentation. So Dallas Plantation, they said had 22.6% ownership. Sandy River Plantation would have 16.70%. Rangeley Plantation would have 20.9%, and Rangeley would have 39.8%. I did break down the dollar amount so people could see those numbers. But the way I did it was just straight off the top. That did not include whatever additional fees that would be required from interest and bonding. And depending on which way we go, could be different.
Could we also list the potential subscribers that was presented in the first CCI presentation? They had a little matrix of the number of E911 addresses, which they were basing their potential subscriber number from.
And the point of the I don't remember seeing that. So is that just to give people a general idea what who would be?
Would it-
E911 is actual physical home.
Most of the time, yeah.
Okay,
We have issued like a number for a beach. We did it just because people were worried. It was a popular beach for like docking boats or, whatever. And so they were concerned if there was somebody that had a heart attack there and you needed to call 911, that they would find them. So we did issue like one. But we all know our 911 numbers. I mean, couldn't we just like
I think
chime in and say Rangeley Plantation has X amount of numbers?
we have, right here.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We
I
have,
don't remember seeing that. That's all. That's,
Yeah. so we have total locations here. This is from way back when. Because we know that the apportionment costs are going to be discussed. And I think it's.
I mean, what do you mean? What does that have to do with it?
It's relevant to how people perceive the cost. Rangeley has the greatest population, greatest tax base, and they have an allocation of cost based on fiber miles rather than subscribers.
okay, the only thing I just want to point out before we go, we're right now, Steve, we're having Carrie, we're having a little debate on I used the breakdown that Consolidated had given us with their percentages about ownership. And I guess the reason why I'm using their numbers is because it is based on fiber miles, but it's also based on ownership. So at the end of the 20 years, what does each municipality own? Because at the end of 20 years, this is going to be an income producing situation for our municipalities. Because that's the end of the contract. We're either selling it and making money that way. We're leasing out our fiber backbone to providers, and we're getting a monthly fee that's all pure income. The income will come in based on the percentage of ownership of the network. So if the network is, so that's why I had utilized CCIs, because they had set it out based on cost. Linda's asking that if we could also include the information of how many actual physical addresses, the E911, 911 addresses, to try to come up with what we feel comfortable with those percentage ownership costs are.
No,
Okay, I said it, okay.
no. Your argument and what you just presented is what needs to be presented. And they need to be presented side by side, because the original information that came through has been digested and understood as Rangeley receiving the greatest benefit and have the greatest number of subscribers. And this is more wholly dependent, the success of it, on Rangeley. That we have moved on from that, but that notion has not progressed with the information we've received, and exactly what you just said needs to be presented, because
Okay,
I would bet that is going to come up as a topic of discussion.
100%.
okay.
Yeah.
So basically what we just discussed, we're gonna include in the piece of paper that I had put out, I had just done the percentage of the CCI fiber. We will also show the E911.
Well, use this matrix. Why don't we
Matrix.
use the matrix that we were presented.
And then
originally?
we will word it like I just said. So
Exactly.
I will listen back to what I just said.
You got it.
Okay. Does that make sense, Steve?
Yeah, I want to interject one thing. The cost of doing business in Dallas is going to be different than the cost of CCI doing business in Rangeley. And the reason I feel that way is that there's going to be a main trunk line in Dallas with a few streets. In Rangeley, there's going to be multiple trunk lines and multiple streets and multiple sides and so on and so forth. The population density. So I think what Kate has done more reflects the actual cost of doing business in terms of distribution of ownership and distribution of the result of the 20-year contract, what it actually represents later on. Does that make sense to you all?
Yeah, we're not disagreeing, Steve. We're just anticipating the discussion and the question for those who have not been apprised of all the steps we've been through.
No, I agree with that. I'm not trying to dispute that. My point is that we've gone through this as a group quite thoroughly, specifically you and Kate and Laura have gone through this quite thoroughly. And we can anticipate till the cows come home. I still agree that Kate's plan is a sound platform to start with.
Just asking for an addendum and to have everyone apprised of the same information, because anyone who has a file on this will still have the original CCI response to the December 7th meeting, and those numbers have stuck. So you can present, as Kate just did, exactly what you did to everyone else, and we'll all be looking at the same information, and we will all hear the same feedback from you and from Kate.
Perfect. Yep. I agree. At the end, when we present to the public, the information is not going to be debatable. It's going to be, we've decided that this is what we're going forward with. Okay.
Agreed.
Okay. So then I just talked about, then the next part of this was end of contract ownership by municipalities. So options that end determined, I just described those. Municipality, we do have the option where at the end of the day, Dallas Plantation could decide to run their own network, you know? Others might contract it out, we could contract it all out, and depending on how that's broken up.
We should, at some point in this area, interject that they are considered a provider of last resort, and that is specific to telephone. That's specific to landline telephones.
What do you mean by that? Provider of last resort?
No, well, telephone is a utility. Okay, so they can't pull out because they're a private company and they are providing a public utility service recognized by the law. So they can't just say, we're done, you're costing us too much money, it's too much of a loss. Okay, but that only applies to their landline telephones.
Not their internet.
Not internet and not voice over protocol or over internet protocol. So as long as we, for municipalities, keep our landlines to our town halls.
Okay, cool.
Could they pull out the fiber? Well, we would own it in part. What
Yeah.
part of that would we own and what part would Consolidated own if they?
I
have
don't
to
think they
pay-
said that. I do not believe that they separate the telephone service from the internet service. It is the same.
But,
So you think it's a
entity.
benefit?
so
Yes.
we've
Yes.
been told by Consolidated that the total project is gonna be like $5 million, right?
Yeah,
We're only paying 3 million,
Yeah.
3.7 million. So who owns the extra 2 million worth of product?
Consolidated is doing, is paying for their portions. So they're gonna own, we're gonna own the fiber on the pole. That
Okay.
might be a good thing to say what we own at the end of it. We're gonna own the fiber on the pole and all that stuff, but when they have the router is gonna be theirs, you know,
The
some of the switching mechanisms that back at Consolidated will be theirs.
Okay,
So there's things like that for them to build it out, it's gonna be over $5 million.
okay.
But what we're gonna own is the actual physical conduit, I believe, on the poles.
Right. What they did in the New Hampshire contracts that went through was on their warrant articles, they termed Consolidated's input from the build out cost of 5 point whatever that they projected to us as a donation. And I don't know if that was a marketing thing to kind of help sell it, but it might be worthwhile of having consolidated's contribution to
yeah.
our total build out is 1.6, whatever it is.
And maybe I mean, I guess they can't like deed it over or something, but, and maybe the switches if it's in their office, but I mean, are they gonna take off the connecting particles or pieces to the
I
fiber
think,
to
I
the
think
pole?
that there are actual small buildings that house these, and I think there's one right around the corner here on Pleasant Street. And that's where all the magic happens, where the
Yeah.
fiber comes in and does its thing. And I believe that's what they could.
It's a good
So,
clarification.
Yeah.
Well, but what they're hoping is that after 20 years, we renegotiate the contract with them and then all stays.
They're hoping that they break
That's to
even
be-
on this.
Right.
And they get some federal funding along the way to help them. They're betting really big on rural internet.
I have to,
Go, yeah.
so what?
So then we had benefits, we're just keeping it going and fleshing this out, so. We'll do I'll add a little clarification in this very beginning of what parts, how it breaks out the total and our part. So the benefits, of course, would be to drastically improve broadband options to our region, provide reasonably priced options. This is kind of where you were saying hit home hard on the benefits, and that's where we can,
Reliable, affordable, accessible.
yeah. And it would be built, so it would be built for the future. There's also limited to no cost to the communities, decreases implementation and capacity issues, meaning right now, when you call Consolidated, you are not going to get on because they are at full capacity. When they build this out, that issue would go away. They would build that out so that if we did not go forward with that, they would upgrade Rangeley when they felt like it.
My other question, and maybe you guys know this, maybe it's a question for Consolidated. My understanding is that, and maybe this is wrong, but I've heard, sorry, I'm trying to speak louder for the people that aren't in the building, that a lot of times internet companies, they actually purchase like their internet block of internet space. And once they exceed that, then they're capped, but they could actually purchase more space. Is Consolidated maxed out to the space they've already purchased, or is there? more
No,
purchase
what they're
space?
discussing is there's little hubs, like in Aquasic, there's a centralized hub box. There's no more ports to put people into.
Right.
They're full.
Okay,
They gave
so
us a
Yeah.
and it's not.
diagram.
Yeah, so then they have to
Purchasing.
then they have to say, okay, we have to build out another hub for us, for him, for Consolidated would be 40 grand. So is it worth building a 40 grand hub in Aquasic? Will I get enough people? Well, I have this other hub in, Presque Isle that I know is gonna be built out, so we'll do that one first and then we'll think about
Okay.
doing Rangeley or however
So
they
it's not a matter
evaluate.
of Purchasing the internet data. Okay,
No,
No,
that's good to know.
yeah.
the internet's pretty limitless.
It decreases implementation and capacity issues, which we just said, and fiber eliminates some of our service issues. Meaning that, I don't know about you guys, but every spring and fall, my phone lines crackle. You get a lot of disturbances in the line, and things like your internet, when you're on DSL, you get dropped off a lot, and then you reboot. Fiber eliminates that issue, that the technology of fiber will eliminate a lot of those types of issues. The risk is CCI could sell or declare bankruptcy, which could affect us. The options, if they go into default of any kind with selling or bankruptcy, we're going to the end of year contract options, which is run a network ourselves, bid out the network to other providers, or wait it out with CCI and see who buys them and what the bankruptcy terms are, because they just renegotiate, they just reorganize usually.
They go into receivership
Yeah.
and they are managed by a separate entity and continue their service.
So
Yeah.
that's the risk. And then I wrote risk of not moving forward. the CCI did talk to us when we were questioning about them, that they have done purchase supplies up for the next 2 years. If we were not to, there's every place and their brother is trying to do broadband now. There's grants, like we all discussed, that are be coming out over the next 6 to 24 months, potentially. There's gonna be a lot more projects out there for people to implement. And if we don't move forward, then basically it would be an ROI discussion for CCI every time they wanted to upgrade, whether it was worth it or not to do it in Rangeley or not. That would be from a CCI perspective. We haven't been able to build a strong ROI presentation to anybody else to do it. And we have some limited options now, and maybe in the future, there might be some more options, but we would certainly be delaying our abilities. That makes sense. Anything else I should add?
I think it might be worthwhile to just outline the fact that broadband is not a public utility. It is not a right. And for all of the infrastructure funding talk in the headlines, that is, off in the future. What we have now are broadband funds allocated in the state of Maine through Maine Connect Authority. However, after receiving their presentation, we would still need to make a contribution, and our project is essentially funded.
Yep. Okay. I
So
agree.
we've got again, we've got another good deal, and if we go back to looking at grants, which is, worthy of discussion, I don't think we're getting ahead in the game, but that's my personal opinion. But it needs to be understood. It's not a public utility. Consolidated is a for-profit company. We are not financially attractive.
Right. Is anything else I should add to the broadband overview piece?
I think you did a really good job.
Okay, then the bank versus bond, we still have to fill out that, but we need to present the pros and the cons on that.
Mhm.
So I need somebody to do that. I don't have the information. Basically, the bond is a lower cost, most likely would have a lower interest rate. It has the con on the bond is the time, the real bond problem is the time constraint that we have got to have it in on August 2nd. And if we don't, then we are going to the bottom of the list on CCI, and we're back 6 months later going for a bond. And we're implementing next year versus this year. So yeah, that's if we'd have to renegotiate. The price for the proposal would most likely go up according to CCI as well, because the cost of the materials is going through the roof.
Who's on the list with us right now? Who's behind it?
Who's on the list behind us? Like, it's basically a lot, all communities
The
are
rest
pretty
of Maine.
much. Yeah,
The rest of Maine,
If
Baba.
The rest of Maine is behind us now? They're on the list?
well, not like
They're all-
cities like Lewiston and maybe not Farmington, but there are areas in Farmington like New Sharon.
Bangor,
Um,
South Portland.
Are they all behind?
They are all looking at this, and I just spoke with one law firm who is actively engaged in negotiating contracts with their clients and Consolidated, and that's just one law firm. And there are multiple internet providers within the
It's
state of
not a
Maine.
secret, is it? What's a town? Is there any towns like this nearby, like Greenville or? such a
I have no
thing?
idea who's on the
Confidential.
list.
That's confidential.
So we don't
My-
we don't really have the
What-
list.
What my point is that we go back to not being a priority. So the only time we would go up to be a priority is if we had could convince them that we would have enough ROI, return on investment, story for them to actually implement things in Rangeley. And so far, in my experience, we are not high on their list. So we would go down. That's what I was trying to reiterate. And if they're doing build outs of towns, then they're not gonna, they don't have unlimited people.
Right,
So
they're-
they're gonna have to,
But it's contracts in
Prioritize.
Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, and Maine.
But it did sound like they would not be long in implementing though, like who was it?
if we go forward.
If we go
Yes.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If we don't, though, the risk is what happens if we don't.
so if we don't,
The other thing would be that $40 a month that I mentioned with the $10 fee, which is 50, would not be there.
it would be more.
It would be dramatically more. For instance, right now at 25, I have,
35.
no, I have 20 over 20, I think.
But you have fiber.
I have fiber to the business,
Mhm.
and it's $325,
Ooh, a month?
right? A month. That's what they charge.
Thanks.
And that's not even close to what they would, so
So
that's what I'm trying
My
to,
question is, are they trying to hold us over a barrel? As far
No.
as trying to push us to do something maybe a
They
little
don't.
sooner?
No.
As far as like saying, okay, if you don't do this, then we're gonna charge you more. I mean, I know that the
no.
price of everything is
Price of
going up.
materials is
Yeah,
a
skyrocketing.
factor across the board, no matter what you're talking
Yeah.
about. In speaking with Jeff Nevins, who is our primary contract, he said they have sat with other municipalities for up to 3 years. They are not pressuring us for anything.
Yeah,
We are feeling pressured because we anticipate this move for broadband to be implemented in rural areas. There is infrastructure money coming, there is state funding coming. There are grants that have already been issued to do the kind of work that we did 2 years ago.
right.
And there are communities who are outright saying, we want it and we'll pay for it, and we're gonna raise tax dollars.
So when we went into an RFP to other places, they did not offer it for free.
Oh, no.
They offered it for you are gonna guarantee payment of like $5 million.
And then we're.
And then
walk
we'll,
away
and
from
then
it.
we'll not, and
We're
we
gonna
won't,
build it,
we're gonna build it,
that's it.
and then we'll, we'll answer the phone when they call. But so this is the best option for, the objective here is to give everybody in our, every single one of our community members the ability to connect. And right now that is not happening. It's also to get them, if they do need to connect, that they're gonna be connected in a way they can actually do something. That is also not happening. And that they will be able to do, now that we have remote communities and remote schoolings and all of that, the technology is for more video, more pushing data, not less. So when you wanted to stream a TV show, I mean, you could certainly not do it on certain internet levels now that we have in our area, but that's like the future of how people are
Healthcare.
gonna get healthcare, remote healthcare. So for our end users, this is the most promising solution, and they can do it for us for free, but they are doing it in a way that's we're partnering with them by the bonding and all that
Absolutely.
stuff, so.
I mean, I'm just saying like, the biggest worst case is that, and it's not even the worst case, it's obviously economic, thought into this is a big deal. As far as like putting out a project for 6 months, I personally have no problem with that. It would be the cost of it that would be the biggest burden. I mean, unless I guess, there are people who can't get the internet, but I don't know.
What I'm
As far
saying
as-
is if we don't sign, we would be back into a renegotiation. We're gonna be renegotiating with Consolidated if we don't. I mean, now I don't think that's impossible. I think they said that they would be willing to do that, but
But they're not gonna
Um,
hold these prices.
I don't believe they'll hold the price that they put together
For
3 months
materials
ago,
and
yeah.
How long are they gonna guarantee this price? Do we know?
I think as long as we continue to move forward.
So is moving forward at the next bond round, is that progress in showing that we're moving forward, not necessarily August, but
I
are
don't think
willing
they
to
can
hold it?
guarantee that. I think they will indicate that, but they will not, I don't think they can
Legally.
guarantee.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the RFP notes that the proposal should be valid for 1 year. So the
Okay.
proposal is valid for 1 year from when you received it.
Which
Sometime
was-
late March or early April, I think.
So
Yeah.
if we went, if we go to bond and get it in August, great, hallelujah, you know, that's awesome. But if something happens time-wise and it has to go later,
Well, the next bond is, you said March, right? Next year?
I thought it was November.
I thought it was too, but
No,
then somebody said,
November is when the August application pays out.
yeah.
Oh. okay.
And then the spring application, I believe, is late February, early
Yes.
March, with a payout in June, late May, June.
I believe that's correct, yep.
Okay, I misunderstood, because I thought I said I thought I heard someone saying in one of these meetings
You did.
that we could do it. Okay. No, that's not okay.
May I interrupt for just a second?
Yep.
I think this conversation is extraordinarily important because it's highlighted some costly issues if we do not expedite and move as fast as we can. I know it's scary for those of us who are a little conservative in this aspect. However, the cost of doing business, you all know, is skyrocketing, and I don't see an end of so in other words, if we wait and don't make this next bond application, then we've got to go back to the drawing board on a lot of different levels. And I don't think that's a smart thing to do for any of the plantations or for Rangeley. So I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted that one more time.
So that is the con of the bond, is the time, the firm time date is kind of what I was pointing out. If we went to a bank loan instead, we have a little more flexibility with our dates. We could still move rapidly, but you know, that would be a pro of the bank. The
Yeah.
rates would most likely be better with bond than they would be with bank. So those were, we just wanted to point out too, for everybody to understand, if it is definitely bond, then we've got deadlines, basically.
So what about the option, like I think somebody had mentioned it, is it possible for like Rangeley to get a bond and for maybe Rangeley Plantation to get a bank? And maybe, who knows, Sandy River will get a bond and maybe Dallas will get a bank or a bond. Is it possible to pay in different installments?
That's a good
to
question.
consolidate?
We have not
I
asked
think that
that.
would have to go to
Yeah.
CCI. Ultimately, I believe that was the final word when we spoke to them a while ago, because it introduces 4 origination fees, 4 different legal agreements, and 4 different payments. But we don't know.
Good question for them. Might be worth finding out.
Well, we already know that they will negotiate in contract with 4 different municipalities. Okay, now the price might go up, then for your number, if you said, I want to go bank, they might say to you, well, we won't, we'll pay up to 3% on interest, we won't pay 5.
Okay. and
All right, so
that's-
there might be, so which would
Yeah.
make things more complicated. is-
That's a good
yeah.
question, yeah. I mean, to bring that up because they are paying interest rates.
They are paying all the legal rates, interest rates, et cetera. And that's why the recommendation was bond.
Yeah.
And 1 bond for them is easier than 4 bonds for them,
I'm not
or
really.
1 bank, 4 banks.
I think when they're dealing with, I mean, our communities are giving a good gift to Consolidated and letting them use our infrastructure. They're obviously paying for it.
Don't think of it that
No.
way.
So I mean, we're doing something, in my opinion, for their business, because they're gonna be getting user fees. Maybe there's not enough user fees to pay for what they're paying. I don't
They
know.
Consolidated has made it very clear they will be losing money for the first 4 years on this. So now their hope is that they will be making money after that first 4 years. So their return on investment is at least 4 years.
So I guess my point is that if we need to negotiate, they should be willing to work with us in negotiations if we want to go in 4 separate packages you know, and we're paying you what we're paying you every, you know.
They
whatever.
haven't denied
Yeah.
that possibility. They would certainly prefer.
I do
Better
think
with
though,
one
I guess I just want to be clear. I don't believe that they want to send 4 different packages to sign. I think the only thing they're willing to negotiate and to talk about and allow in 4 different ways is how the money gets to them. Because all the terms and all the things, they're not gonna care. I mean, they're gonna be in a hub that's maybe physically in Rangeley, but servicing Rangeley Plantation. You know, they're gonna be doing all this work, so they're gonna wanna negotiate one contract with 4, if we go individually in payment, it would be 4 payment mechanisms, right? So,
Which is not
right, so
unheard of.
yeah, so wait, just 1 second, Steve, let me just finish one thought, although I just might have lost it, but go ahead, Steve. That's okay, go ahead, Steve.
I know I was a half hour late. Is the interlocal agreement off the table now?
Not at all. During the presentation, we're gonna talk the pros and the cons. Yeah, no.
If we have an interlocal agreement between plantations and the town, there's one negotiating, that's it.
Yeah.
And go for the bond with the auspices, with the agreement from all the municipalities.
I'm
Right.
just thinking about if there is a chance that, you know, maybe a community doesn't vote for it, you know, think about those options. It could be that everybody's on board with an interlocal and everybody thinks it's awesome and
It
it is
doesn't-
awesome.
If all 4 agree to interlocal and the bond, then we're good, right? We're all
Yeah.
very easy. If 3 do it, 3 could be in the interlocal
Yeah.
and the bond, or they could go non-interlocal and still do the project in 3 communities. It would just make it that the other community was not gonna be getting fiber to the home options.
It's my feeling, for the purposes of moving forward, that we make an assumption we're going to call special town meetings for the interlocal agreement, draw up the proposed contract, and get this thing going. And then if they say no, we have another conversation of how we pay for this.
I think we need to present options.
Well, hold on. We're talking about the presentation to all of you, the assessors and everything, right? And then we're gonna have to do a presentation to the public.
Yeah.
But the truth is, if we're all gonna go off in 4 different ways with 4 different negotiations, then it's not gonna happen. We're gonna have we're having one negotiation with CCI. The only question is how we're paying for it.
Exactly.
Right,
That's what I
so,
meant. I didn't mean,
yeah.
I don't mean that Rangeley Plantation is gonna do their own negotiations. That's what I meant. If we
Yeah.
wanted to go in and do a.
But
bank
I think that's a great question about, you know, if 2 go to make it to the August 2nd bond and 2 choose to get a loan, what does that mean? Do we all put it into one? I don't know how we do that. That's all
payment.
legal.
tricky.
That's legal stuff that we need answers to that I don't have right now, so. So the next steps on this, so on the go ahead, Steve, I'm sorry.
One more comment, and then I'll stop and let you go, Kate. Liz, I respect giving options. However, it is this committee's duty to bring the best plan forward. And it's not a question now of, well, we could do this, we could do that. They need to see a unified front from us.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
That's true, Steve. But right now we are going to present our options to the quarterly meeting, I guess. And you have to get the assessors on board with that. So if they don't know all of their options, it's not necessarily, we're not at the point where it's all or none yet, I don't think.
Did you hear that, Steve?
I did, thank you.
Okay. So then the last part of the presentation to them was be next steps in timing. That means scheduling the presentation to the community, the time frame, and in my opinion, it should be around the middle of July, around July 15th. We need to start contract negotiations with CCI. We need to select the people who would be having those negotiations. We need to schedule the special town meetings. We need to agree on how we're gonna fund this. We've got to come up with that is the next step out of this. We've got to make a decision. And we need to make a decision on the organizational considerations. So we can, like, we've been talking about, we'll present, but at the end of the day, we need to move forward with, you know, what our best solution looks like. Because we have from June, if it's June 30th, we have approximately 30 days to get this done. If it's a bond, and if it's a bank, then we have a little more lead time. If we want to move forward, and for me personally, I think everything that delays it is a risk. And I don't think we'll ever get high-speed broadband internet. We will never create. We went through it so many times. We've started this conversation 5 years ago. So in my opinion, any delay is a risk. That's
Agreed.
okay. So we didn't talk about who's presenting this to the people.
Let's get our written materials together and in one packet. I'll work with you on that.
Okay.
And I will call CCI for their new rates and put together a matrix. We can, you know, tighten this up, look for the documents that were sent through. I don't believe everybody's received them. Perhaps delegates have, that the agreement. There was a clean copy that CCI sent through for a service agreement. That's a great reference that goes through the default terms and the possibilities for, you know, end of term service, where you run it on your own, you sell it to somebody else, you wait through their default if they default. And just make sure everybody has the same information and gets it before the meeting. So it's gonna be a bit of a push, but we can do it.
All right, so what's our next step here then? Do we need to have we probably should have one meeting prior to the quarterly meeting.
Not a bad idea. Go ahead, Steve.
Next step for Rangeley Kate is to you to be there Monday night with Laura and Linda and whoever else wants to attend. We'll do a quick presentation to the board. I think you'll find support for a special town meeting. And I would like to see if we couldn't do that with the other assessors and the other plantations. That would be my suggestion.
I
We're
didn't
not
follow
gonna
that.
be at the point where we're gonna be able to hold a special town meeting. I know that the other assessors are gonna need time, a few days to even think about that. We have
That
an
would be-
assessors meeting on Monday and we're planning on talking to the other two assessors about this.
Okay,
And I think Laura may have plans, I don't know, to be there at that meeting.
Why don't we try to get as much updated information that we've just discussed here to you before your Monday meeting
That would be awesome.
for your assessors and for the Rangeley Select Board. We could probably do that, right?
Absolutely.
so Steve, I don't know, did you hear what's going on? So Rangeley Plantation has an assessors meeting on Monday. Laura had talked to them about, they were gonna do an update on where we're at with all of this. Laura said she would attend that particular meeting. I know Rangeley also has a select board meeting on Monday. If you'd like me to come, I would be happy to. I think I can, yeah, I gotta double check, but I will do everything I can to come. But the quarterly meeting everybody needs to be at that quarterly meeting, because at that quarterly meeting, when we leave that date, we will be in the position where we need to schedule special town meetings and move forward with which way we're gonna
We'll have
go. and-
definitive next steps.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna be scheduled, we have to call Consolidated and see if they can present. I mean, I'm not gonna call them and say, we need you Tuesday to present. That's not even,
Right.
reasonable,
Yeah.
but there's logistics, that need to happen. So we need to make sure we're moving forward and where we're gonna
Why not
present.
CCI presents the quarterly again?
No, not to the
No.
quarterly, to the public. Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Right, because they have all, and then they can answer.
Yeah.
They did a fabulous job. I thought
Yes.
they did a very nice job of answering those questions. And being honest, I mean, the guy was saying, yes, it's not no risk. There is risk, but here's what it is,
Yeah.
That's a long one.
So I guess, are we going another week, doing next week for this meeting? For delegate meeting?
Time wise, I have my calendar in front of me. Can we put that meeting with everybody involved, including CCI on the 30th of June?
Answer that, Joe.
At 6 p.m., June 30th at 6 p.m.
He wants he's asking if CCI is gonna be there, but no, they're
No.
not at that one, right?
Thank you.
We can ask them to zoom in.
I don't think that's.
Well, it might not be a great idea, though. Yeah, that's true, because we're talking about that this meeting's to talk about
Our
more than
negotiations.
just the solution, so I guess that would be the only risk.
Getting on board.
It's our
Same, yeah.
negotiation
Yeah,
to move forward with them.
So
Is
I
that-
think a Wednesday meeting would be great, because then we can touch base, I can talk, whoever's here can talk about how Rangeley Plantations meeting went. You guys can talk about how Dallas.
So do you want to meet
Plantation-
next Wednesday?
Sure, for this work group,
yeah.
I
Yep.
think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Then if there's anything we need to talk about.
And if there's any more
And we
pieces of
can
paper that we need to,
refine our
Yeah.
package.
all right,
Yeah.
sorry, one more meeting.
Who's the point
Is
person
that
for
okay?
putting this agenda together? We determined that yet? I'm happy to do it. I just want to know who it is.
For
If
next,
all the information comes to me, I can prepare it, format it,
Print things out.
print it out.
for the quarterly?
For the
Yeah.
quarterly, probably Rangeley or somebody, I don't know, who has the paper, who has a printer?
Well, we all have our own printers. I think we just need to
If-
have it assembled
If
for
you
sure, but
emailed it, would that be like?
we can try that, but
And
I
I
think we've got to have copies available here
Well,
or wherever
I
we
want
need.
your assessors, though, to have it a week ahead of time.
That's what I was just
In
gonna
a
say. They-
booklet where they're gonna be
really
able to
do.
go read it, and this isn't something you wanna read on a phone, and
No.
I don't like doing that, and I can't imagine
When
everybody
you
else
get
does
it
either.
during the meeting, you don't have time to look through it.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody should get it ahead of time. That's how we do it here too.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
formal meetings like that,
Perfect.
it comes out
Yeah.
ahead of time.
I'm just saying, like, if you maybe emailed whatever packets need to be stapled, I could do 3 copies for my assessors and give it to them. But if you think that just coming from one source to know that all the pages printed out correctly, it doesn't matter to me either way. I'm willing to come
I
here and
think-
pick it up.
I think
or-
that makes a great amount of sense. If we can put packages together that is all the same package material, the same exact thing, and then potentially Rangeley prints out and puts in the select board's package, and then Dallas does the same for your assessors, does that make sense to you?
Sure.
Okay, and then you do
Yeah,
for yours.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to email it and I'll print it out and put it, like, staple it. Or if you want me to come help you print and staple here, and then I'll just take the packages with me, whatever you want me
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
just
that-
let me know
We'll
what
make
you
it
want.
happen.
That part is, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the easy part. What I'm asking is, who is generating the final version of this agenda? The formatted final copy that's going to be distributed? Is that
We
Kate?
will do that next
Ooh.
Wednesday.
Okay.
We're gonna agree
gonna
on
work-
it,
work
we're
on
gonna work on
agreeing
it
on it.
and come back.
Perfect.
And we did decide not to do a PowerPoint, but to have it be a discussion point, right? So we
we
would
did.
just stand, okay.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
Perfect.
good to me.
Anything else?
Oh,
Go ahead, Mr. Keith.
I guess somebody can bring to the meeting, to our assessment meeting, why our portion is over half of what Rangeley is gonna be.
it's because of the miles. I don't know if you heard Kate say, sorry, I don't mean to read on you. I don't know if you heard Kate say that, like, it goes by who owns
Fiber
how many,
miles.
the fiber miles, who owns what.
How many miles road Rangeley got?
Oh, so you want to know how many miles each town has?
They did it by percentage, so they said out of the total fiber miles, Rangeley had 39.8%
Of the mileage?
of the fiber miles of what they're putting on the poles that we will own at the end of the 20 years.
I
Yeah,
guess you'd have to show me that.
Not road miles.
What is it?
You're gonna have to explain.
So
So what is it? It's
So
not
it-
road miles.
it's basically, I mean, I guess you would
Don't
think
the
that the
lines go on
fiber,
the road?
is it pre-existing? Maybe you might have a road that doesn't have fiber on it, so.
Yeah.
So I guess it's existing fiber miles that they're
What is
basing
it?
on.
That's how many fiber miles we have now?
I believe so.
It's how
Okay.
many fiber miles that they will lay to reach each and every residence in each and every municipality.
So isn't that the roads?
Yeah,
Could be long driveways, I don't know.
yeah, all of the above.
I'm sure that there's, I don't know if they're going by their current information.
I'm not buying the 20%.
Hmm.
And Rangeley's, well, almost 21%, Rangeley's 39, that don't make sense to me.
Do they
Well,
have
we can go back to
some
the
way to?
Sewell report and they list.
Oh, it's the
number of
Sewell report.
miles
Is that
to-
where they got it?
Well, that
Huh?
was part of it. And then Consolidated has their own data because they know where their lines are on poles.
Yeah.
And they know where there are other poles where they will need to run lines.
Yeah, I know where the lines are.
Is there anything that we could get from Consolidated?
But
to have a
Consolidated
map?
did an engineer, wait, let's just wait. Consolidated did an engineering process to bid this out, right? So they went off of their engineering numbers and how they would be implementing it and how it would go. That was their breakdown of the fiber miles and things like that. I don't know if we would be able to get their engineering documents. I kind of doubt it because it was probably their internal use. But that's how, when they said, this is how we're building out this network. These are the costs. That's how they distributed the price percentage. That's based on cost, and it's also then ownership. So at the end of the day, Rangeley
I don't care about
Plantation, hold on, Rangeley Plantation will own 20%
Yeah.
of this
I
network.
don't think we should own 20%.
You want to own 10?
But the
I
good
think that's
news is
wrong.
that after 20 years, we could potentially get 20% of revenue from the project if we were to receive payment from another company running the utility.
Or Consolidated, that
Or
at the end of 20 years, Consolidated would pay each municipality money to use the network. Any other service provider would have to do the same. They would not build out a new network.
I
So
think
then they
you
would-
guys, to get more of that, you're gonna have more of the customer,
Or what?
Rangeley.
Can you say that again? More accounts?
Rangeley will have more of the customers, they should have more of the benefits when it's paid for.
I think at that point, though, when you have a company come in and run an internet company, they're only paying the towns X amount of dollars regardless of how many users they probably have. Is my guess.
It's by
So
pole,
Yeah.
What would
by
be the
by
advantage?
fiber miles, by
Yeah.
pole.
A higher percentage of that then.
You know what, Liz, to satisfy Carrie's question, you can call Jeff at CCI directly.
Okay.
If you don't have his phone number and email, I will provide it for you.
Okay.
And they're very good at responding to specific questions.
I will ask that.
And
Okay.
you can get that done before your assessors meeting.
Perfect. Good idea. So we'll find out.
So I
Yeah,
just-
we'll find out.
Yeah, I just heard from Kristen while we were talking. I asked her if she could save the date for the 30th. She can't be there, but I've asked her if she can answer questions ahead of time. So if we have legal questions ahead of time,
Mhm.
get them to me, I'll get them, and then we'll share that in the packet.
And that's the lawyer.
And then
She's
we
the
can,
attorney.
yeah.
I can-
Attorney working with-
Yeah, the thing I can hear right now, just by being in enough of these meetings, is that, well, we have to run that by the lawyers, we'll have to run, but it's so. There will be a delay, not that she would be able to answer a legal question and make it firm in the spot, but she could give a little bit of an idea, yeah, but, okay. Thank you. So we're gonna meet again next Wednesday,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah.
Same time, that channel.
Works for
Okay.
me.
Sounds
Do this.
good. 2 o'clock. I know that Bubba wanted it later, but it seems like it works for everybody else, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great you're here though. You can come next week too.
Yeah.
It's much better in person. It's so
It
hard.
is, yeah. It is hard to hear and it's.
All right, so we're gonna call right? Is that the end of this meeting?
So you're gonna, I just want to make sure you're gonna work on the
Linda and I will work on,
final version of the agenda.
yep, and we will write down the list of materials that we want included in the package.
Okay.
And the only thing I don't know is the bond and the bank stuff is not me. Like I wouldn't be able to,
What we do have, what I
If
gave
we
you the
could-
last time was a schedule of payments, the difference between the.
I don't wanna
From
be
the bond.
responsible for the bond and the bank is what I guess I'm trying to say, is because I don't really,
Well, do you think that would be helpful? Because the bond, main bond bank is where that information came from.
I think that the presentation to the, should be as clear, but as easily as highlighted, you know, instead of the gory details.
Mhm.
But, you know, on the pros
Well,
and
that
the
was,
cons.
that was just a sheet of, this is your total cost, 3,7, whatever,
Okay,
with
I still don't know if,
variable interest over a 20-year period.
yeah,
And then we can just get an outline from the two local banks of, this is what we would be looking at. This is what we would
did
want.
we
from
answer
you.
the, are we having a banker in the room? Question, did we answer that?
I think we decided just to have a sheet
The sheet,
of
okay,
information stating that they would be interested and that they may, they may have, I know they have different vehicles for municipal loans, and one actually goes to a bond, and it's a lower rate. It's gonna be higher than the bond banks, but it's still gonna be a lower.
yeah, the interest rates are low now too, which is a good thing, and in 6 months, that might not be the, yeah.
Change bond rates could be.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah.
bond won't be as dramatically affected as the banks, but it's seeming to go in that direction right now.
Bonds were limited to 2 dates per year,
Right,
and we cannot prepay them.
Is that what you found out? But we could use a grant to pay the bond. We could put a grant in a savings account. Can we not do that?
I can kind of talk about the grant, in this situation, where the grants come in, the beneficiary of a grant is not Rangeley. Only that $10 piece, it could potentially help that $10 piece. But the beneficiary of the grant is Consolidated Communications.
Which would.
Because it's
lower
gonna
our
cost them,
expense,
yes,
Or
but,
lower their expense, not
right.
ours.
So, but the end of the day, we're gonna, instead of going to our bond for 3.7, we're going for a bond for 3.0. We're doing the exact same thing, and they're gonna pay us the exact same, they're gonna pay us to pay it.
Mhm.
So for us, it gives no benefit. It just benefits Consolidated's overall implementate.
Bottom line, the part
Yeah.
consolidated.
It gives us no financial benefit.
So you're saying
no.
it doesn't matter because we're still gonna get our monthly payment.
Right, we're still gonna have to go for a bond for whatever that different number is,
Okay.
and they're still gonna pay it off. But we're not gonna get money.
So,
It's not gonna help
yeah,
anything other than Consolidated. So that's my view on it. The only piece that would be the $10 piece. The $10 per user.
which
So we're
10,
still getting the money over to consolidate. Really, ultimately.
We would be Consolidated, we would have to go to Consolidated and say, how much do we have to give you to pay down that $10? And they would say, you have to give us
All of it.
$300,000, and then we'd give the grant to them.
yeah.
So it really doesn't help us.
In the long run, the $10 is kind of immaterial. I mean, what would be material would be like the monthly fee. As far as like $35 versus $135, that affects people more directly. So to have that $35 thing, nobody's really gonna squawk about the $10 thing. It's gonna be the jump from 35 to
The service plan, like you
135.
go through with
Yeah.
DirecTV. Sign up now, $29.99 or $19.99 a month, and then a year and a half later, it's $139. The broadband industry, I believe, is being very closely watched, and these rural programs, because Consolidated is getting federal funding to promote these rural programs. They can't all of a sudden turn around and hike the rates up, and I think that's been made very clear by Connect Maine Authority as well as the FCC, because there are rural development agency funds that come into areas that have nothing. So
Right.
that all interplays. From what we have been told and what we can read with current legislative moves and where they're putting their money, that should be a standardization
So they,
going forward.
but a concern is that if we don't act now, that they're gonna increase rates
Those materials, yeah, for the bill,
for,
for
well,
the bill.
so not the, now, for not the service to the home, to the individual subscribing.
I'm not as
Are we
worried
worried
about
about
that
that?
because that's going down, been going down.
Okay.
So I think that might be okay. I think it's the total price of the project
more
will
so.
definitely go up because of
Price of
the
materials,
materials of
availability.
construction
yeah,
and employees. I mean, people, they get raises, they have to cover.
cost of business goes up.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought that a concern was also that they were not necessarily honoring the $35.
No, they actually went
Package.
from, their original proposal said $79 and they went down to the 30. Yeah, so I think that's good.
Yeah.
And, but that will be when I call, Kate Williamson calls and says, hi, Consolidated, I want to be a customer. They're gonna say, we want you to sign up for 3 years for 39, these are our packages. And then they have to meet the agreement to the individual end user, so that would be up to each and every person. Now, the thing I could do is call Skylink, Starlink, I knew that didn't sound right, Starlink.
Might be
I could call
Starlink.
Hughes, I could call, and I could debate which ones I wanna do, and I could choose whichever one works.
Yeah.
Like right now in my house, nothing works, so I mean, but
Yeah,
so.
so you're not a candidate for, not saying you should, but Starlink or Hughes because of the way your house sits, maybe.
Well,
it's a
Hughes
point in
is
the right
just so
direction.
expensive, we've already priced it, it's not even,
Yeah.
and it's not good, and then like my satellite, just that rain the other day, yesterday, went up 20 times, my power goes out, yeah.
Yes, the weather affects satellite,
Yeah.
so in the plantations, cell services.
Mhm. Spotty. at
I would
best.
go with
Yeah.
Rangeley Internet, I think wireless technology is good, it's probably good enough for me,
Mhm.
but
If
it
they're
would
in your
take.
area.
Oh, no, he cannot get to me. We've already mapped out exactly where we would have to be.
Yeah.
It would take him 4 or 5 years to even think about going over there. Lots of agreements with private owners, because you have to put towers up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Repeaters.
Or
Our
repeaters
our
and
topography,
and then
Yeah.
trees,
our
heavy trees.
density are not conducive
Mm.
for companies to come in and set up operations and think they're gonna make money. off of
Right,
it.
but somebody else could, they don't have to go to Consolidated.
Yeah.
If they don't like it, they don't like it,
Right.
you know?
You can do what you want.
But this,
It's an option and it's a viable, like you said, affordable, cheap and accessible.
Right, right now and probably for the foreseeable future, at least a decade. I mean, satellite might be cheap as chips. We might have them on our cars someday. I don't know.
It's
We
hard to tell.
can't foresee what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
This here now works on a lot of levels.
and should work for the long term. I mean, it's not gonna go away in the 20 years. It's not gonna-
Right.
It really serves the entire population, our median income. It serves the elderly for healthcare. It serves our kids for education.
Mm.
It serves our residents on multiple levels. It serves our second homeowners.
Definitely.
All right, so
One-
we
I'm
just
sorry.
officially,
One more quick
Oh, okay.
question.
sure.
Like say, and this obviously probably does not really have much to do with the presentation, but say somebody puts in a new subdivision, would they be responsible for running it if it's a private road?
He answered that question.
It's like 150 feet. It would be probably similar to what would happen now if you put in a new subdivision.
Which
You
I
know,
don't know what happens.
Neither do I.
So-
So, but I think it's the same, but they did say, like, let's say you built a house and you had a 50-acre lot and your driveway ended up being 10 miles long. You would have, that wouldn't be free. You would have to pay for the poles. They would go 150 feet in, but they wouldn't go,
Mhm.
keep going and
I
keep
just
going.
know that someone, I think, bought most of a subdivision, a bit pretty good sized subdivision with lots of lots in Rangeley Plantation. It was Noyce, one of Noyce's properties, bunch of Noyce's properties, and I could imagine if they have intention of developing that, that would be a question that they would want.
Yeah, and there was no issue between buried lines and overhead lines. It
Yeah,
was
Not at
just,
all.
yeah.
They can pull it through.
so it would be how they're gonna get their utilities in there anyways.
Yeah.
So
Ask
that,
if they
When you
ask.
call Jeff.
I'll ask him, yeah.
Ask him that question because his other associate answered that.
yeah,
Because we also asked about our off-grid properties, because there's one in Sandy River, but it's more accessible from Dallas Plantation. Totally off-grid, there's no
Mhm.
utilities, so they're not getting internet run,
no, they would have to
Yeah,
pay
package.
yeah,
Yeah.
for the,
there's no poles.
okay,
Well, thank you.
thank you. We'll
Was
see you
that
next week.
helpful, Liz?
What's that?
Was this more helpful?
Yes, I can hear so much better. Yeah. And you feel like you can have a discussion and you don't
Thank
feel
you,
like you're
Carrie.
interrupting.
We're gonna end the meeting. Any more questions?